So I will preface this by going, I am not an expert on the dynamics and the details of the region. So I want to lead with that. My background is originally as a theoretical physicist and then as a technologist. And my obsession for the past decade has been building technology that can be used to better understand and represent groups of people. And my focus has largely been on doing this in conflict zones. And most of that work has been with the United Nations. So I'll note what you're seeing here is sort of like the most modernized version of a process that is maybe 6 or so years in the making and applied to this unique context. Before we talk at all about results, I'll kind of just note kind of the premise or the assumption that a lot of the work that I do makes is that there exists common ground between groups of people in conflict. With that preface, I'll note I'm just going to walk quickly through kind of the technical aspects of this and give you a little sense of what was happening, what the process was that led to the results that Natalie is actually going to share with you. So the first kind of piece of the process, or the first component of it, is this live dialogue. This live dialogue takes place on a platform called Remesh, which John mentioned is something that I've built with a team over the past decade or so. But the overall dynamic of this dialogue is actually quite simple. So participants will join the live dialogue that are invited, and that dialogue is steered by pre-designed prompts that participants are going to respond to. So in this case, they will have joined the conversation. We invite them in. They see some messages, they see prompts, and they respond to that prompt in their own words, in natural language. So it's nothing fancy. They type it in into a text box. And then once they've sent their response to that question or that prompt, they are going to vote on the responses from others. And so everything they're seeing and everything they're voting on is their words or the words of their peers who are participating in this conversation. And what this lets us do is that we can take this little bit of data, everything that everyone has said and everything that everyone has voted on, and we can use this to actually estimate the amount of agreement there is with every single user submitted statement, so their statements and their words, and then we can look at the agreement for those statements across different segments of the population of participants. And so you can imagine this might be different sides to a conflict or different demographics or amounts of religiosity and things like this. And so this is kind of the core of what makes this possible. But this isn't where it stops because it uses AI, and hopefully most of you have at least a little bit of a skepticism towards trusting things that involve AI too much. And so that leads to kind of the overall arc of this kind of core bit of the process. So the main kind of sequence of the process goes like this. We run this live dialogue where a bunch of people come in and participate. They contribute their statements in their own words and they vote. And we use that to identify the statements that are likely to have consensus, where there is a high agreement for those statements, not just in one segment of the population, but across all the different population groups that are participating. Think of this as getting our initial list of consensus. But then we're going to want to there's a lot of duplicates in those statements. There's a lot of things that are the same. And so we then are going to combine all of the ideas in those consensus statements into a short list of a set of statements. Note here, again, we're going to use AI to do this. It accelerates, makes it quick, and also means that there's not a risk of people imposing their own biases and ensures that those set of statements are still preserving the words and the language and the ideas that came directly from participants. So it's just holding up a mirror to participants and arriving at a set of statements that we think are really representative of consensus. But again, we're not going to assume that that is true. We're actually going to then take that set of consensus statements and we're going to run it through a no frills, no AI, nothing fancy poll. And during that poll, participants are going to vote how much do they agree with these statements, and then we're going to have them rank them to see how important they are relative to each other. And this gives us our kind of core set of results. It gives us the set of statements that are the words that came from the very participants themselves and an understanding of how much agreement and consensus there is with those statements. And if the process works well, we're going to learn that indeed these are extremely highly supported from participants on all sides of the equation. And that's what we'll be looking for. And those results are the types of results that Natalie is going to walk you through. Now, I'll note when I first came into this, I said, great, let's just start and go right and bring everyone from all sides into one big conversation. And everyone went, actually, before we maybe even try and find consensus across all of the groups, there is some division even within the individuals on different sides of this conflict, and we should perhaps start there. And so the kind of sequence that we've run so far, if you call this kind of end-to-end process from the live dialogue to the finding consensus to the testing those statements in a poll, call that one dialogue cycle. And we've now run 4 dialogue cycles. So the first 3 of these were with each side kind of separated, different cohorts. First with Israeli Jews, second with Palestinians from the occupied territories, third with the Palestinian citizens of Israel. And then lastly, and just recently, the 4th dialogue cycle that we ran, where all participants from all sides were participating simultaneously. And so this led to the results that you'll see that Natalie will walk through. But note that all of these results have kind of an important property. They did not come from ALLMEP, as awesome as all ALLMEP folks are. The kind of key to these processes are that it has to reflect the words, the language, and the ideas of the participants themselves. And so what you'll see are the statements that encapsulate that, and then the kind of numbers representing how much those do actually represent those people or do actually represent consensus.